So I found myself just south of the North Carolina, Virginia border, heading north from Atlanta up to Virginia, where I was living at the time. Pulling over the shoulder with blue lights in my rearview mirror. I think we've all been there before. And you'd think at 25, 28, you'd be used to that by now, especially with my track record. But I wasn't. Every time I got pulled over, my heart's pounding like crazy. And then I think, all right, I'll pull that move where all the female friends I know pull, where they have the tissues and they start crying and have a good sob story to go with it. But I see the officer get out of his vehicle and he starts waddling towards me. I realize that's not going to work today. So he walks up next to me, asks for my ID, my insurance, all that kind of stuff. I have them ready because I've known the drill for a long time by now. And hand them over to him. He looks at him briefly and says, "Mr. Hill, hurry the hell up. And why the hell are you driving 50 and a 70? I didn't really respond, and he handed them back to me. Told me to be careful, and I was on my way. And at that moment, I wanted to call my dad because I knew he'd be so proud of actually getting pulled over for going 50 instead of 80 and a 70. And I pulled back on the interstate, headed back up north to Virginia where I was living. The real reason why I was going 50 was because I didn't have any cash in my wallet. My check card was declined a few exits back, and I was doing my best I could to save the gas I had in my tank. This was my life for the first 3 years my restaurant was open. But before I moved up there, before I was in restaurants, I was in corporate America. I went to University of Alabama, got a master's in marketing, then dove into consulting work. I was living the American dream. I did that thing that I kind of felt like I was supposed to, and realized early on that, like a lot of people, I think, consulting was not for me at all. I was doing a job I hated. I didn't feel appreciated or really like I was part of a team. And I was dying one day at a time and realized that I needed to make a change. I didn't want to look back at 50, 60, 70 and say, man, you did that with your life? But at the same time, it killed me because I felt like I was doing what I was supposed to. I grew up in a nice suburb here in Atlanta, nice private school. I saw my dad work his ass off for us growing up and to give us everything we possibly could. And I wanted to be able to give the same things to my family when I have one. And realized that maybe it doesn't have to be a certain way. It's this picket fence life that I call it, where you go to school, get that job, find a nice man or woman to settle down with, then buy that nice picket fence house, corner lot, you got a tire swing hanging in the front yard, and then you send your kids back in to the same cycle. So I said, and it was like this pull. It was one part of me felt like that was the thing to do because that's all I knew, that's all my friends ever knew. And there's another part of me that said, you can't do this for the rest of your life. And I think part of that comes from some things I dealt with early on in life. When I was 14, my mom passed away from cancer after a 5-year bout. And along the way, she not only taught us about life, but actually living and really showing up every day because you never know when it's going to be taken from you. And as a result, it really instilled a lot of things in me that I really appreciate. And I knew I couldn't just show up every day and not really do something that I appreciated and felt valued for. So I, after a long kind of bout inside my head, decided to go for it. And I called my cousin, who owned restaurants in Virginia at the time, and moved up to Virginia to work with him. I worked in restaurants all through high school, college, grad school, even had a catering company when I first went off to Virginia. But I worked with him, and then he and I, soon after, opened up our own restaurant together. So at 28, I was a restaurant owner. I felt like a big deal. And I felt like that kind of validated me because unlike a lot of my friends back home, and like my father, who created a successful business for himself, I didn't have the cash flow coming in, but I did have that title at 28, so I felt good. And I felt like I was doing something like that mattered. But yeah, I couldn't pay the bills. For 3 years, I didn't get paid a dime. I was investing everything I possibly had into this thing, trying to make it work. Meanwhile, I couldn't pay rent on time. I couldn't pay get my car fixed. Couldn't take my girlfriend out for nice dinners. And pour my heart and soul and all my creativity into this thing. It just wasn't working. But meanwhile, back home, everybody thinks, oh, Chris has got it made. big deal up in Virginia. Especially at that point, I started building my own personal brand, so I started doing TV kind of all over the East Coast, Florida up to Virginia. Started getting a decent Facebook following, minor celebrity in the chef world, offered opportunities to be a part of events, and that was a certain validation for me as well. And then certain females would start following me and comment on photos that were airbrushed of me and say, oh, this guy's really cute, blah, blah, blah. And then I started flirting back and seeking validation that way while I was hurting a girl that I really cared about and really loved and was really the most important thing to me. I hurt her more times than once and more than I ever could have imagined. All because I was trying to seek something else that said, good job, Chris, you've made it. So finally I had this opportunity to move back home after 5 years of the restaurant of not working. I had the opportunity to open a restaurant here in Atlanta. So my brother and I made plans. And this time I packed my bags, my car, was heading south, heading home. And I could open up this restaurant in front of the hometown crowd where I was born and raised and they'll always call home. He and I had plans, we had a concept, the business plans, we had an investor lined up. And on the day I was heading home, I stopped by after the 9-hour trip, the restaurant we were scouting out, where we were actually going to have a meeting the next morning, hoping to finalize things soon after. And it was dark, 11 o'clock at night, the restaurant had closed, my car packed full with everything I had pretty much. I pulled up across the street and just looked inside, put the car in park and started thinking about what it would be like. And I could envision this future and I could see myself in the kitchen and customers, my brother, and I could smell it and feel it. Everything about me said, you've done it, you've made it. I left after a few minutes, got a good night's sleep, getting ready for the next morning with the investor and the landlord, and I get an email as I'm getting ready from the investor. Hey, Chris, I hate to do this to you, but I'm out. It was the same thing I've been dealing with the last 3 years, over and over. I felt like I finally had things figured out and it was finally coming together. And just my heart was broken. But I've been resilient the last 3 years. Why can't I keep going? So I did. And we found some more investors that were going to be a part of our journey with us. And soon after, my brother came to me and said, listen, man, I'm out. Thank you.